All right. So for those who are new and joining us, I know we have a very intimate group, and a lot of people tend to come in here as the time goes on. The way Will and I usually run these events is it's for you 1000%. So what we like to kick off is a sneak peek of what's going to come out in the newsletter tomorrow um, with Sales Hacker, and that's just looking at an email that Will and I both reviewed and then rewrote it twice. So you get my rewrite and Will's rewrite. And then from there, we open up the floor. So if you have an email related question, if you have an email you'd like us to review live and potentially rewrite, we'll just basically have you raise your hand and just we'll take you off mute and let you come on and give us some context and work through it with us.
Yeah. With a small crew today, I think we could probably spend a little bit more time per email too, which is nice.
Yes. Usually we're rushing to try to get through and then we can't even get through everything. So this is good. All right, let me share my screen. Stand by.
Standing by.
All right. We don't need this stuff open. All right, cool. So this is an email, just to give some context here. This is an email I received from someone who asked for us to review this for one of our newsletters. So it's actually a recruiting email, just coming from a recruiting agency that's based out of the UK. So just kind of wanted to give that context in addition to, kind of reading this original email that we received. All right. Well, you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Let's do it. All right. So this is the email, and I like to treat recruiting emails just like sales emails. And this is a sales email on the recruiting side. It's not to recruit a candidate. This person's trying to land clients. So I use Will as my example. Will, the almost 2-year lockdown has triggered a large increase in resignations of people seeking a new direction in life. I'm willing to bet that the food and bev industry has also seen an exodus of some key players. Have you had a key person leave? Are you looking to hire some great A players for 2022? I started in this industry when I was still at school helping my mom and dad in their cafes and restaurants. I later set out on my own selling fruit juice and coffee to catering companies throughout the UK. I used to have stands at Hotel Olympia and the fast food fair, which used to be held in Brighton. During this time, I met hundreds of business owners and entrepreneurs in the food and bev businesses. Are you open for a quick 15-minute chat to see how we could help?
So when Kristina first showed me this email, my initial thought was like, okay, so is this person pitching recruiting services? Yeah, Joshua. Is this person pitching recruiting services, or are they like pitching some kind of movie script over at Netflix, right? Because it's like all of a sudden I'm now getting like this person's biography. And so like my first like reaction when I saw this and I started to review it was just like, I went to like cut a lot of this stuff out. But yeah, I think like one of the other pieces here too is like you're trying to showcase that you have this like deep understanding of food and bev, but then you're still saying things like the food and bev industry. Like it just kind of like weirdly juxtaposes upon itself. The other thing that kind of stood out to me is like, I don't know about y'all, but like I feel like, especially if you're in recruiting and HR, you probably have heard the term the Great Resignation at this point like 7,000 times. And so I'm not sure it's going to hold the same level of weight that, saying it in some other way would. It'd be like if you're in events and like somebody reached out to you about like going remote. You've probably heard that pitch like 700 times. So, Kristina, I know you took a swag at this.
I did.
Check it
out. And I echo all your sentiment there. I think there's a lot going on. And I tried to take that same approach, but try to condense and maybe personalize a little bit more. So in my context, what I know is he's probably reaching out to someone who's leading recruiting at that particular food and beverage company. If not, probably someone who would be a potential hiring manager. And the reason I know that is because recruiters are also overloaded right now with recs and open jobs. And so they're doing more with less. And so they're tending to lean on recruiting agency support. So this is what I did. Will, saw you're leading recruiting at insert a food and beverage company, thought I'd reach out. Curious, with the great resignation upon us, and yes, I use that. Are you bleeding out any of your key talent? And yes, I purposely chose something very dramatic. We're helping other food and beverage companies, and this might be a good place for like storytelling through like a case study. Like we helped X food and beverage company tap into passive talent to backfill X roles. I got very generic here, leaning in on our deep relationships in this space because I feel like that's what he was trying to bring was like, I know everything about this space because I've been in it since I was born. He's really trying to say, I know this space and we have deep relationships. Open to see how we could help. Cheers, whoever it is. And then because it seemed very important to him, maybe from a connection standpoint, I also threw in a PS. And yes, Josh, I sign off everything with cheers. I actually used to sell fruit juice and coffee to catering companies throughout the UK, and you could have seen my stands at Hotel Olympia or the fast food fair held in Brighton then. So I tried to throw in that personal touch because I think it achieves the same thing without having to detract from this main body.
Yeah, Dan, you asked a question about incomplete sentences. Something I'm curious to hear, like where are you seeing those in relation to this email? Because I don't know if I'm necessarily picking up what you're putting down on the incomplete sentence thought. The first one.
He's talking about, he's talking about me leaving out, like I saw you're leading recruiting at a company, thought I'd reach out.
Got it.
Yep. Doing that on purpose, by the way, because it's language that's fluffy, and it just makes it easier to get to the point, to be honest with you. Will, I'm sure you have something to share from Lavender Data.
Yeah. No, it's sorry. I use them so often I didn't even recognize it as an incomplete sentence. There was like this implied like command, right? So yeah, it's something that I think about a good bit in the sense of like how people are reading email, how they're actually going through it. If you're writing an email, right, like the first email that we saw there with that like long drawn out prose. If you think about that, like you're really relying on this person to read it for comprehension. And that's actually not the way people go through their inbox. They're triaging, go through their to-do list. And so when they're reading a note like this, they're reading it for categorization. And that categorization, that's where like these incomplete thoughts, these sort of like half-baked, like sometimes I'll even just like take a sentence and just like split in half and let it like sit like that because I know it's easier to scan with the eyes. Just like thinking through like like a compound sentence where you might have like a but that like stands out. I was just helping somebody rewrite a sentence, and instead of like including it, I was just like, let's just break it up and have the but be capitalized so that it's more visually apparent, so they can have them like juxtaposed against one another. And so like just taking that into mind, it's like how people actually read through versus what's actually grammatically correct.
Sweet. Yeah, mine too, Dan. I think we all use incomplete sentences, at least if you're in the know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Will, I want to see your rewrite.
Yeah.
Again.
So I took a different approach than you did. I love that you like kept the same spirit of the original email where I kind of just tossed it. So mine might feel a little bit more familiar from what we are usually writing here in the sense of like, I just kind of went with like my go-to framework, which is, hey, Will, saw you're hiring for several different roles. Curious, I'm wrong to guess that a percentage of that will be to backfill roles. We're seeing this across the board with recruiting leaders in food and bev. They need to keep growing, but they're now also having to account for folks leaving. We've been helping folks in your space find great talent, worth a chat to see how we can help your team. So doing a few things there. One, I'm using the problem to create credibility, right? I'm not like citing any specific case studies or anything that we've done with these particular clients. Just like, yeah, we're seeing this all the time. I've also done some like gymnastics to get away from the words like great resignation, because it's like I'm thinking to myself, like, how do I stay away from getting categorized in that pile? But I start with a observation, and then I try to make inferences based on that observation, which shows the credibility. Say they weren't hiring across different roles, I might need to write this differently. But typically you're trying to work with somebody who's trying to grow if you're in the recruiting space. So you kind of have done some sense of qualification in and of itself right there. So that was kind of my approach. The other thing I did that's a little bit different than what I would usually write, I got a little wordy in that second sentence, but I was trying to keep it from being a question. One of the things that we've seen within the millions of emails that we see every month is that asking two questions actually kills your response rate. The best reply rates come from emails with one question, and actually looking at our data, Kristina over at Lavender, like 0 questions does really well at Lavender for some reason, particularly in like cold emails. And so like thinking about that, thinking through like what we're writing, I was like, okay, how do I apply that in my writing? So this was like my way to do it. Yeah, Joshua, I think you've seen the data as well. There's this weird like elephant curve where like 2 like has this dip, 3 is the worst, and then it starts to come back at 4 and 5. Which could be, you're telling some kind of narrative through the questions, right? It's probably the best example that I've come up with where somebody would reasonably ask 5 questions. But this is sort of like my Chris Voss meets Lavender data of like, I'm sure I'm wrong, kind of like pushing it back and like putting a negative spin on my own sort of assumption, right? To not come across as too assumptive in what I'm coming across as, or in what I'm writing.
I love this, Will. It's the flow is really nice, and you come across as like that subject matter expert by saying like we're seeing this. That third sentence, we're seeing this across the board, just leans itself to you're having conversations with people like me. You're doing XYZ. You're tapped into the industry without having to say it. The other thing that I really like is the weird pattern interrupt of using a percentage sign, because I'm automatically drawn to that.
Yeah.
Versus like spelling out percentage. So it's a small tweak, but it's weird how those things can like impact behavior.
Yeah, it's interesting though. One of the things that I didn't quite piece together afterwards, you mentioned it to me, was the person who wrote this was British, which leads me to assume, particularly if they're referencing things like Brighton, etc., they're also probably reaching out to a UK buyer. And like with buyers in the UK and Germany in particular, we find that like that more formal language works really well. And so this actually might have done poorly for that particular market. Something I call it all the time, just like, my best practices aren't always your best practices. As you would say, Kristina, always be testing, right? So like in this case, it might be something like, Will, I noticed that you're hiring for several different roles. Would I be wrong to assume that this is to backfill some certain roles? That would be the way to make that more formal, to speak to that more European buyer. But American buyers in particular like this more casual language, that more conversational tone. And so that's why I use it here.
I love that. And Olivia made a good point. She said, so the shorthand kind of writing would be best suited according to the persona you're contacting then. And yes, there's a lot of nuances, and you should know your target audience the best. And I know that comes with time in your space, etc. But the only way you're going to figure out what works is to test. And when you test, you can look at the data and it will tell you the right story. Oh, I should do this more. Oh, ooh, okay. I got a lot of unsubs from that. So I think it's important to keep testing, and Will and I are always testing too. So
actually just reminded me of something because I was just talking with someone who shot me over some messaging they were sending over to the CEO of a company. And it was like rich with acronyms. And I'm just thinking back to one of like the first conversations I was having with my co-founder, also named Will. I was coming from this like consulting world where like I was like steeped in all these marketing tech lingo terms. And so like I'm just throwing these acronyms across the board because I know them, right? So like naturally I assume that other people know them. And he looked at me like I had three heads. And I just like had this like flashback moment where I was looking at this person's messaging and I was like, oh, you shouldn't send this. Like you're sending it to the CEO of a company, and like unless they've got like some super rich marketing background, they're gonna have no idea what you're talking about when you say things like ABM and XYZ and like data warehouses and stuff. And so it's just like you got to think about that persona around the sense of like um, not only like how you're coming across, but just like you're not going to build credibility by doing that. It's actually going to make it come across as though like it's just like overwhelmingly confusing. It's why when we look at our data, it's like the simpler the messaging, the better it works regardless of persona. And it's because your messaging can now break through anyone's familiarity with the topic because you're almost talking to it like you would at the Thanksgiving dinner table with grandma, right? Where you're all of a sudden like boiling it down to its simplest notion of like, here's the problem, here's the solution, here's, is this interesting?
Awesome. All right. So before we open up the floor, I always do this after every time we share these. And I know it's a small group, but if you think Will crushed this rewrite more than me, you're going to say Will. If you think I crushed it more than Will, you're going to say Kristina or Kay. I don't care. But drop it in the chat and you don't hurt our feelings. I'm always curious to see what Jake says because I think Jake maybe flip flops because you're here all the time. But we'll see.
Curious if there's anything we can do with the visual structure of my email. Interesting. I'm thinking through the visual structure.
Want me to reshare?
Yeah, do you mind resharing? Because I'm just like, what about it would you think of when it comes to the visual structure? I actually like that it's pretty much focused on white space. And that's by and large one, actually it's two parts. So one is mobile visibility. So like if I put that on a mobile phone, it's going to be easier for them to like read through it. There's not going to be any big blocks of text. The other is if they don't read it on a mobile phone, it's still really easy to scan through. So there's like two visual aspects that I'm thinking about. That said, what were your thoughts when it came back to the visual structure? And Joshua, I think we can pull you off mute if you want to chat to it.
Yeah. I think I see what he's saying though. It feels a little heavy on the first two sentences because those are joined, but then you didn't join any other sentences. So maybe it's just a weird, like you said, Josh, it could just be preference,
Yeah, that's fair. I think the other thing to think through is this isn't an inbox, this is a Google Doc. And so how it would show in the inbox might be different than how it might show within the inbox. But probably a good thing to consider because if like I'm viewing that within a desktop, it might be that way. In which case, like it might come across.
If it was a desktop, depending on how big your window is, it's going to look like 5 lines of text that are all separated and broken, right? On mobile, though, I think that first one's going to wrap, right, into maybe 2-3 lines. And then maybe that third one wraps a little bit. So yeah, I think you just have to be, listen, you could also test this by, if you don't want to use Lavender, which by the way, Lavender does have mobile preview, but That's the only plug you get, Will. I don't get paid to do that, by the way. But if you wanted to do without lavender, you could just email your template to yourself, right? Or email what you're going to send and then open it up on your mobile and see what it looks like. But,
Your desktop.
whatever. Will's like, I'm not going to say you should do that, but you should.
Go for it.
Anyway, cool. Well, let's open up the floor. Feel free to use the raise hand functionality. Who's got something, a question, an email you want to work through live? Don't be shy. This is a safe space. Promise we won't make fun of you. I promise.
Here's the Google Doc link if you want to join us on the.
Yeah.
We typically just open up a Google Doc and we can work through the emails together. So.
Hey, Josh.
Josh, what's up, man? All right, unmute you.
I was going to say, you're
Hey,
on
sorry about that. I switched to a different app.
Can
you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good deal. I'm about to paste this into the Google Doc.
Okay.
Basically, I had my final interview on Tuesday, but their whole staff went to vacation Wednesday through Sunday, and I was supposed to hear back Monday. So today's like 5 business days. So I want to go ahead and send a follow-up, just to kind of push the inbox, see where they're at. They're filling, I want to say 12 roles. So obviously they've got, at least 100 interviews to go through. So I don't want to be too pushy, but also I want to make sure that I still stay on the top of their minds.
All right. Yay. I'm so excited. I'm so invested in you getting this job at Demandbase that I can't even contain myself. When it happens, it's going to be fireworks.
That's so sweet.
We got you.
No.
Even though, just remember, Will didn't remember that, but it's all good.
Is it editable? It's not letting me. Hey, there we go.
It's like,
there we go. And your subject line with the question mark, that's because you don't know what subject to put, not that you're going to put a question mark for your subject, right? Okay, cool. Just clarifying.
Something to throw in there just to try it.
Yeah.
And when was your second conversation? You might have already said this, so I apologize, but when was it?
So it was Tuesday before the Thanksgiving break. I had my 6th interview with Kevin Rooney, the senior director of sales.
6th interview?
Yeah, and I had an internal referral.
Okay. And was that the final interview from your understanding?
Yes, that's the final.
And what was the expectation they gave you after completing that interview?
It would be that I would hear Monday last week.
And you didn't follow up with them since then, right?
No, I have not.
Okay. So it's been a
Well,
full
actually,
week.
I did with one. So I sent the hiring manager a short email last week, but there wasn't a response to that either. But my friend who works there, she's been checking the tracker and it hasn't updated. So at least I know they haven't made the final decision yet.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing there, Josh, is there's what's actually happening internally, and then there's the story we tell ourselves, right? So it's hard because you don't know what's happening, but there's probably some sort of internal story there that's
especially with the time off and how many different people are involved in their hiring process. 6 times 12 recs with 50% of your people falling out somewhere along the line. It's easily 100 interviews, 30 minutes a piece. So I'm very understanding of that portion.
Awesome. All right, let me read through this. Will, you probably already read it, so feel free to chime in while I'm getting some context here.
Yeah, so, all right, so Kevin, it's your second conversation. I've got some context. There's some language things that read a little awkward to me. Overall, it's going to come across just fine, right? The fact that you're following up, you're putting in that little extra note, it'll sort of check the box and they'll appreciate it. I think there's some things about the note that could probably be worded a little bit better. So really enjoyed our second conversation. Is good, right? It's kind of formal, but it's not terribly formal. The next part, I definitely gained value from your coaching. That to me is worded a little weird. I mean, I'm nitpicking here.
Yeah, I was having trouble finding a balance between what flows good and what's short. So brevity versus quality. is the issue.
Yeah. So I've definitely gained value from your coaching around target companies. Maybe just say like your coaching around target companies was really valuable.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Then the next sentence, I think you can break it up into two. So I would say I'm still very excited about the role, period. Was there any movement towards a decision? Question mark.
Wow.
So that's just like, because to me that like one sentence read really long. So I was just like, how do you simplify that down some?
Cool.
Then I love the PS. I think it's like super cool of you to add that in, also to share it with us. Appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit more human and kind of reach back that not only was I able to overcome it during the interview, but it's something that I took forward with me.
Yeah.
Welcome. I agree.
Yeah. The pace of learning is giving me a lot of challenge. So like I'm guessing the Kevin on the call was challenging you about something and then you were trying to respond back.
Yeah, Kevin gave me a curveball. Demandbase's primary offering is helping you filter through your list of leads so that you can go after people that are showing the most intent. And he took it back one step and was like, hey, here's these 4 companies, rank them on who's the best fit. So it's like the one thing that you're counting on your software to do, he's making sure that you know how to do yourself. It was a really good little question to throw in at the end and definitely challenged me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. That gave me that curveball was a welcome challenge. That would be kind of how I phrase it.
The one thing that I'm hesitant towards is that supposed to be a curveball, or was that something that I just overlooked during my research?
That's a good question, right? Because like technically it's just kind of part of the job.
Yeah.
You could say I get what you're saying. You don't want to shoot. You're trying to show that you're self-aware, but then you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot. So making it more generic, even.
Yeah, talking about the challenge, but maybe leave out the curveball. So it's like, hey, this is something that I should have been prepared for, but I'm glad that I had the challenge regardless.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
We could even just say the question, or he referenced it as a pop quiz.
Maybe you just say he references a pop quiz, so like
call back to his original language.
I would use his own language there. I'd say hopefully how I handled the pop quiz showed you that I welcome a good challenge.
I get what you're saying.
That way you can like spin his memory of it to a positive light.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think would love your thoughts as a good transition to the close? It doesn't seem very necessary.
I think was there any movement towards a decision is good.
Okay.
You could say like, thanks again. Yeah.
Or something like that, like thanks again for your time, or the time you spent with me, or something like that. But yeah, I'm with you. I think you can keep it off.
Should I get fancy with the subject, or just put follow up or something similar?
I would almost put what the role name was and follow up.
Okay, cool.
Like role name and then like hyphen. So it would be like something like this.
Yeah, so it's SDR-NYC.
What is it?
SDR, and it's in NYC.
I might lead with your. I'm trying to think of how this would be in the inbox. Maybe I might do interview follow up
Yeah.
You're probably not interviewing for a bunch of different roles. I don't know what Kevin's role is within the company, but like it might not be.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe like hiring decision and then hyphen SDR NYC or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Since it's not just my initial interview, it's like the final one.
Yeah.
Because he's going to get 30 of these, you know?
Yeah. Well, I like that. Interview feedback.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, you can leave the question mark off, or you can put it on there if you're feeling sassy, but yeah. Something
I don't
like
want to
that.
put too much because it already has been a little bit, and I don't want him to think that I'm upset with how long it's taking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Understood. Well, hopefully that's helpful. You'll have to keep us updated.
That helped tremendously. Just being able to kind of think through it with you guys collectively.
For sure. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it, man.
Yeah, I got on your schedule tomorrow, Will. So I'll have something else for us to work on.
Love it. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, man.
Cool. Awesome. Dan, I saw your note about quick comment. Is it in regards to this email, or should we do Lauren's note first? Okay, so let's do Lauren's note first, just because she raised her hand, and then we can jump to yours. So Lauren, is Lauren off mute?
No, I'm going to allow her to talk now.
Okay.
There we go, Lauren. Hello.
Hi, Lauren.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm actually in the recruiting talent acquisition space. I'm an account executive, fairly new to this industry. I'm doing a ton of cold calls, working on the email. A lot of your advice has been helpful, Will, already. I've been following you on LinkedIn. So I put one of my cold emails in there now, and my challenge is, well, one, like I'd love to get some feedback on the email. Two, I'm like getting people to open my emails and even sometimes click on the link to my company, but like that's where it stops. So I'm also wondering if you have any good advice on like what to do if you notice they're opening. How quick do you then pick up the phone? What's the second email? That sort of cadence, if you have any kind of direction there.
Sure. Well, and like the thing is, you're gonna call them, right? You should absolutely. You see they're opening the email, pick up the phone, give them a call. The key there is they're probably not going to answer, and I'm sure you found that to be true. Am I wrong?
Yeah. So, no, you're not wrong.
Leave the voicemail. That's just like the simplest thing to do. But all you need to say is like, "Hey, Kristina, I left you a email. From talking with other talent acquisition leaders, they're typically dealing with one of two challenges. I thought my note would be particularly relevant. Yeah, I'll send you a quick follow up just now. Look forward to connecting. Like that's it, right? Like it's kind of what you would send in a text message, which is just like, hey, we had a great call. I'm gonna shoot you a follow up.
Yeah.
And it's the same sort of mindset. It's like you're using it because what they're gonna see is a little notification on their phone that you called, that you left a voicemail, and they'll go and they'll open it and they'll say, okay, voicemail from unknown number, and then they'll have a little transcription on their phone and they'll read it out, and then when you send that follow-up email, it'll be timely because they'll have the context of your voicemail on top of it, plus it'll just be like just that extra little nudge that shows that you're a real person and you're trying to touch. Now Kristina is using a framework that she has actually written for us and used with us, and it absolutely slays reply rates. So super excited for her to like talk through this with you. But basically it makes it very visually obvious what the problems are that you solve for, and then speaks directly to how you solve it And because it does those two things, like in a nice visual format, it's really easy for people to process. And they're like, okay, that makes sense. That sounds interesting. And so like when we get responses from an email that's just like this, typically like between a 10 to 15% response rate, they're all positive and it's all like, yeah, that sounds really interesting. And it's because it leads with problems, right? And I see that you're trying to do that here, right? I'm hearing over and over that people can't find these good folks. I see you're hiring for over 100 positions. So like one of the things that I notice in that is your observation is actually kind of hiding, right? Where you've got this like when talking to other TA leaders, blah, 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 as opposed to like leading with, yeah, Kristina, you're hiring for over 100 positions. I can't imagine, how overwhelmed your team is right now. With other talent acquisition leaders, they're experiencing, the exact same problems. Tapping into quality passive talent and retaining that talent.
Love it.
Like X and Y.
Yeah, and this is a format, just so you know, Lauren, that I have used with numerous companies, not just Lavender. We also sell into the TA space, although it's not probably the same service as you. We sell into the TA space, and this is something that's worked really well because it does kind of what Will is saying. It's surfacing the problems, but it's also painting you as a subject matter expert because you're having these conversations already and you're showing that, right? And these are the two problems that you're surfacing that are coming up in recurring conversations. It seems to position the conversations really well, and it's also really scalable in the sense that this format is probably the less personalized format that I use when I'm reaching out to prospects or when I'm having other companies do it. You don't have to do a whole lot of heavy personalization. And if your trigger is they're a TA leader, so they're either leading recruiting or leading TA or something like that, and they have open positions, then all you have to do is potentially change out maybe one or two variables each time, and it scales. So this is kind of my rewrite for you.
Yes, I love it.
Just, and you can leave this off, right? Like if for some reason there wasn't something to call out or there was a little bit of general curiosity there, you could just go right into, hey, and talking with other TA leaders, here's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, no, I think that's great because that first line's almost like the personalization you need. Like, she was doing some research. She knows, she sees what's happening here. So it's kind of like a nice balance there. I love it. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
And Lauren, actually something that I said verbally is something that I would actually not do. So let me rewind my own little tape here a bit. So one of the things I said was, given you have 100 roles open, like I can't imagine how overwhelmed you are. What happens when you use messaging like that? I can't imagine how overwhelmed you are. Or, I'm sure your inbox is super busy. You don't want to be a pest. You're giving the recipient a reason to to opt out. And so one of the things that I'm big on is like just get straight to it. So Kristina's version of just thought I'd reach out, much sharper, much better. Don't give them any excuse because as soon as their brain sees that, they're like, you're right, I am super busy. And then they
delete
their inbox. It's not even delete, it's just they hit like a mental delay, right? They're like, I can get back to this later. And that's just as bad as getting deleted. There's Eisenhower used to have a 4 Ds of like incoming tasks that he would go through, which is like do, delay, delete, delegate. Yeah, for email, delay and delete are basically the same thing. And so just thinking through it as like, okay, I need to make sure that they don't hit delay.
So if you, let's say this email goes out, they open it, they click, you pick up the phone, you call, you leave a message. How fast again are you emailing, knowing that they're like, you've piqued their interest, right? Like they definitely opened and they're clicking on your stuff. Yeah. How fast again are you emailing after that quick cadence right there?
Kristina might have a different opinion than me, but I would shoot an email right after I left the voicemail. Be like, hey, just left a voicemail. If this is something you're struggling with, let me know if it's worth a chat. Maybe add a little bit more context of just like, given you're hiring for so many positions, I imagine you're looking for a way to get positions filled quickly.
Yeah.
Something I see in a lot of follow-ups is there's not a lot of context provided. And so like Gong's been posting some data around like longer follow-ups getting better response rates. And I think it's more of just a natural response to there being sort of looking for sort of like a natural response to like everybody kind of jumping to these like thoughts. Just wanted to bubble this up question mark where like people are like, I'm not going to take the extra work to scroll down and go read through the context. And so just adding that within the follow-up note so that they can see like at least like problem and that there's some implied solution to said problem within the follow-up is probably pretty important.
Okay.
Yep. I don't disagree. Awesome. Well, hopefully this was helpful, Lauren.
So helpful. Thank you very much, both of you.
Awesome. Yeah, let us know how it works. I'm always interested to hear about the data. So, all right. Dan, I think, was Dan next? Did he have something?
Yeah, Dan said he had a quick comment. So,
Hey, Dan.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
yeah. What's up?
This is my first time in one of these sessions, and I thank you guys a lot. I have just a very minor observation or thought, and forgive me if it's gone over before. I don't know if it's psychological or what, but I read somewhere a while back that instead of saying thanks, you put thanks in advance. And I don't know what it is, but I almost 80% of the time, whether it's a good response or not, get a response to that language. Now, I assume you all might have gone over this before. It's the weirdest thing, and I just wanted to share it.
Yeah. I actually do something similar in my emails where I'll say talk soon. You're sort of implying the next step, implying the close. I'm honestly kind of surprised more people don't do that in their email writing. You think about like the logical progression from line 1 to line 2 to line 3. And a lot of people have always just defaulted to using like best regards, thanks again, something like that. So something like that is one, a bit of a pattern break. But two, if you're thinking about like their eyes going from line to line to line, talk like thanks in advance, talk soon. What you're doing with that is much more of like a logical progression from A to B, or I guess in this case from B to C. Of like the next step is kind of implied. So actually, I don't know if we've talked about it, but I do.
And I'm sorry, I've got a dog barking in the background, and now the doorbell's ringing, Murphy's Law. But thanks for letting me share, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks again.
Thanks, Dan.
Kristina,
Awesome.
have you tested with any of that?
You know, I've had an interesting progression through my career in my sign-off language. I used to do the best.
We all did.
I used to do the best. I still sometimes do the talk soon or chat soon. I find that being probably my secondary. Cheers is always my go-to for every email. But yeah, I used to do the thanks in advance, but it wasn't necessarily my sign-off. It was like pre-sign-off. So thanks in advance. Chat soon, Kristina. Or thanks in advance. Cheers, Kristina. But yeah, I don't have hardcore data because it's not like I was just using that in like a sales capacity. You know what I mean? It was like normal emails.
Boomerang did a study like a few years back, I think it was like 5 years ago, where like ending with gratitude was like 500 times more effective than ending with anything else. But if you think about what that means, it's like, what is an email? So like, I roll my eyes when I see studies like this because it's like, sure, if you end an email with sincerely, warm regards. Like, what do you think's attached to the top of that? And so like I started putting my thinking hat on and I'm like, all right, well, the email itself was probably worse than the one that ended in thanks. And it has really nothing to do with thanks at all. But yeah, interesting correlation, not necessarily causation.
Thanks for reading this. It's like, thanks for reading this. Thanks for giving me the time of day. I don't know. Like, insert whatever your assumptive phrase is. But anyway. All right, we still have some time left. Is there anyone else that has a question or an email to break down? If not, listen, we'll it's okay to wrap up early too, but
I'm laughing at Jake's comment.
Hope you've been well is the bane of my existence.
I'm not a fan. Although I've used it, but I'll use it. I mean, well, first off, I've used it historically because, I wasn't always a great email writer. But two, I will throw it in at like the bottom. So like it would be like at the end, like, hope you've been well. As more of like a sincere note. Am I frozen? Oh, okay. Kristina's frozen. I was like, I'm not frozen, right? Thanks, Lauren. Oh, yeah. Hope Thanksgiving was good for you and yours. Yeah, no, I all those like fluffy intros, they do so many bad things to your writing. So like you think about what's gonna happen as a byproduct, like hope this has found you well, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, hope your family is safe and well. When you think about where it's gonna mobile preview, like when I pull that up on my phone, like the first thing I see is gonna be the last thing I see because I'm just gonna be like, okay, it's just something I immediately categorize. Bye, Lauren. Saw you just said I gotta run. Just like some final thoughts on that. It's like LinkedIn mobile preview is even smaller than say your email mobile preview. So like thinking through like how to get that text smaller and sharper, just getting straight to the point. I think that's crucial thing to focus on. That said, I think they've lost Kristina. And it's just Jake and Joshua. Guys, anything you guys want to discuss? We've got like 10 minutes. I'm happy to chat, but we can always call it short. Kristina's back. What up?
I think that was the hope you're well gods getting mad at me. I don't know. Gong, are you out there? Did you do
this is like the time I recorded Joshua wants to come off mute, so I'll do that. But it reminds me of the one time I was on a webinar and I was talking about like the internet. I was like, the internet's weirdly stable today. This is going well. And all of a sudden, like the internet cut out, and I was like, okay, guess that's not going to happen.
yeah, and I'm on Bluetooth or hotspot now, so hopefully, knock on wood, we should be good. But sorry about that. Yeah. Did you take Josh off mute, or do I need to do it?
I was like, I honestly don't know how to do it, so this is where you come in.
We need to do a training.
I sell internet for a living, and our provider in my building is not us, and it's a very different company. So whenever people come in, they talk trash about the internet. It's like, I wish we had AT&T. But shoot, no, I was going to ask a quick question. Trying to make sure I hedge my bets because I'm wanting to make a career move pretty soon. Like we talked about last time, it's a step into a new field. I've been in sales for 5 years, and I've been managing for about half a year now. But what do you tend to see is the best intro movement? Is it something like an SDR job, or is there something else that I should work towards? Like what's the most logical progression from becoming like a sales manager job like I'm in right now?
That's a really interesting question, because I find that the most common trajectory that we see And Jake, I'm not going to speak for you, but I think you might have taken the same progression too, is going from a like non-tech sales or non-SaaS sales background, but having lots of experience and breaking into SaaS and doing that through the segue of an SDR role. It happens a lot. I'm not going to say that I agree with that progression, because to me, I have always been the kind of recruiter that looks for diamonds in the rough and the people who can bring the right skills to the table and the right experience to the table. It doesn't matter if they sold SaaS before. That's right, Jake. I remember you were in fitness management sales. Yeah, so Jake's made this transition too, going from kind of like non-tech to SDR. But yeah, I see that happening a lot, Josh. And unfortunately, I think a lot of companies are just so blinded by, oh, they haven't had SaaS experience. They haven't had SaaS experience. And quite frankly, I think it's bullshit, if I have to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the kicker, right? Because all you're like, it's like the idea that SaaS is somehow inherently different. If you understand that there's a process involved, right? It's no different than selling any other thing. It's software providing a service as opposed to hardware enabling a service or a service in of itself. The key is they've got a problem. They're trying to accomplish something, and then you have a solution that helps them do that.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was the primary way that I positioned myself, was, talking about how the very same sales structure that I teach is what you use in this type of role. It's like getting an intimate understanding of your customer and what the problem is that they're trying to fix, and then find a creative way that they can solve that, from the position of an advisor rather than a salesman, and make sure that the product that I'm selling actually fits them. So all of that stuff lines up, and I think I did a pretty good job communicating that. But I was just curious what your guys' thoughts were.
I think the other role that's going to become much more of an entry point for folks not with a tech background will be the CSM role, the customer support manager role, where you're allowed to take that more advisory style role and like sit there, work with them. Yeah, the only things that I would say like CSM role requires that like the sales role might not is this notion of like, you do have to know the product and know your stuff around it.
Right.
But with like more and more PLG, like product-led growth motions going, like I think about like our own product, right? Selling at Lavender, a customer support manager could end up having that sales conversation just as much as an outbound SDR could.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. That was a great answer. Thank you, guys.
You got it.
Cool.
Sweet. Jake, do you have any final parting words? You want me to promote you? You know what? You get a promotion. You get a promotion. You get a promotion. There's only 4 of us in here now, so we can make it our show. Hey, Jake.
Hey, what's up?
What's up? How's your world going? How's the BDR world going?
Yeah, everything's good. Yeah, Josh, everything was really good with my transition. It was pretty smooth and everything, so I'm definitely excited to see where you end up and what you end up doing. So,
Cool.
yeah, and I'd probably just say, just like really be picky with the company that you choose. Like you have a lot of good experience, and look for something where you can progress and grow too. So,
Thanks, man.
that's what I was looking for, and I should be on track for an AE position pretty soon. So excited about that. Yeah. So just be picky with who you choose.
Love it.
Yeah, I guess that would be like a good follow-up question. Let's say the demand-based one doesn't work out. What direction should I look?
Ooh, that's a good question, Josh. I honestly think that you should, in Jake's point, there's like got to be some intentionality in your search. A lot of companies are hiring right now, but that doesn't mean that all those companies are going to match your values and what you want to do. So I think it's really important to make a short list. And this is going to require some research on your part too. Like make a short list of your top 5, top 10, whatever that might look like. And then focus all of your energy into breaking into those, whether it's outbounding yourself, right, to the hiring managers, whether it's heck, you could pull a dually and like do a video of you singing or something stupid to get the attention of someone on LinkedIn. I mean, there's so many creative things you can do. You can come here and we'll help you craft something creative. But yeah, that's my.
The other approach that is often underutilized, but yeah, as a founder, I use it all the time, is the warm intro. So like, say there's someone at X company that you want to go talk to because you've narrowed them down within your list of 10, and you see someone in your network is closely connected to them. Say like, hey, Will, I saw you're connected to Kristina. Do you know Kristina well enough to potentially make an intro? Here's why I'm interested in having a conversation with Kristina. And just like spell it out in like plain language, so that they can. Because if there's someone in your network and there's someone who's coming back, they should be, willing to, make that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Key is, like, don't take it personally. If like I'm like, frankly, I just don't know Kristina that well. I mean, obviously not the exact use case here, but the point being, like, sometimes there's people that I just don't know that well, and I'm like, I'm not actually good for making that intro because I don't know the person well enough.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's just like another way to approach it. And there's like a whole process of like etiquette when it comes to a warm intro, which is like you get them to opt you in. Right? Like, so you get Will, and say, yes, I'll do that. Then I might say, do you mind sending me a quick like forwardable email that I can send over to Kristina to make sure that she's interested in the conversation? And like you can preempt some of that and be like, if I send you a forwardable email, would you send it over to Kristina to see if she's interested in the conversation? Because you don't want to get that intro blindly. I see that happen all the time. Where like I'll be like, hey, so and so, do you mind making an intro for me? And they'll just like put me right in touch with the person before they've opted in, and it's kind of awkward on everybody. And so setting them up to set the conversation up correctly is a totally underappreciated skill set. And like doing those things, taking those steps, and then as soon as they make the intro, move them off to BCC with the promise of keeping them posted, but then actually also keep them posted. Like if Kristina makes an intro for me, I'd send at least like a note after I have an initial conversation. Be like, hey, I just spoke with Josh. Awesome person. Really appreciate you making that introduction. Here's what I think is going to come out of it. Sort of like networking.
Yeah, just kind of keep them in the loop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's
tough. I'm already getting people. I mean, I just started at Greenhouse last week, and I'm already getting people who are like asking me to refer them for roles, but I don't know them. Like, I don't know them well enough to say, and I think you'll find this too. If you don't know them well enough, sometimes it's hard. Like, I'd have to have a conversation with you, right, Josh, and get to know you more to understand, do I want to put my name on the fact that I'm referring you over to my company? So the more you can make it easy, and to Will's point, craft that language to help synthesize some of that, the better off you're going to be if you're really trying to strategize about breaking into a company. Yeah. All right. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for finishing out the time with us. And our next one is on the 20th of December. So we will do that, and maybe we'll wear Christmas hats. I don't know. But or Santa hats. They're not Christmas hats. They're just Santa hats. Anyway, we'll see you then.